Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Sipping Tea with Nat and Z. I'm Nat.
And I'm Z.
Z, did I blow you away right there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Look, y'all, we got some new sounds going on here, and we're very excited.
Yes, we are. Very excited.
Only took a year. That's some change.
Just a year and some change.
Oh, but now we know. Going. That's what the year two has in store for you. Season
Yes.
two, better sound.
Season two.
Yeah.
Yes. Better sound.
Yes, better sound, better sound. So what's up?
Girl, it's allergy season for me,
Yes,
which
yes, yes.
means that we are going to have asthma sneak
Mm,
up on me.
mm-hmm.
So right now I am really trying hard not to cough. So if you guys hear me and I sound like an old lady struggling and surviving,
We feel
it
the
is
struggle.
because
She has some vibrato in her voice. It's
yes,
that's
it's
that's
because
asthma.
of the fact that there's a tickle in my throat that I just cannot get rid of. So
But we claiming it'll be gone by the end of today.
yes, hallelujah, praise the Lord.
Yes, hallelujah, praise the Lord. Let's pray for that.
Yes.
So today's topic, it's a good one. It's
Very
on
good one.
colorism in the black community and how far have we really come.
Whew.
So, whew,
A
it's a
timely,
heavy.
a timely episode, I would say.
Very, I would say. I think it's always on time, but definitely
Mm-hmm.
for right about now. So, but we'll get into it and we'll see what y'all have to say about it.
Right. So, we're going to jump into the tea of the day. Not tea experts. Talk to your doctor before you start drinking herbal tea and mixing it with your medications because there could be some side effects. You could turn into a zombie.
And y'all see Walking Dead, so y'all know how that
You're
go.
right.
Okay?
You can start getting a tickle in your throat like me. A whole bunch of things could go wrong. So please, before you mix these teas with your medication, talk to your
Please.
doctor. We're not affiliated with any of these companies, nor are these endorsements. So, what is the tea on the table?
So, the tea on the table today, because it is fall and everything fall, October 22nd or whatever, or September 22nd, everything is like pumpkin spice latte, September 23rd, regardless if it's really that cold yet. So, in the spirit of that, I picked a pumpkin spice chai latte. Warm up on those chilly days. It's made with chai instead of coffee, pumpkin spice, and pumpkin puree. We're going to put the step by step directions on our site because they're like kind of involved, but I'm going to give you an overview of what's in it. The highlights are it's for chai lovers. I love chai tea. It's a twist with pumpkin spice, taking the coffee out and making it your tea version. It's easy to make at home. Make it from scratch using chai, spiced black tea, real pumpkin, which you can buy in the can for like less than $2, and homemade pumpkin spice blend, which is a blend of four spices. In case you didn't know, it's pumpkin that give you the pumpkin pie flavor: the cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, and cloves. Brown sugar gives it a nice richness, and vanilla extract I think is just good for anything coffee, just cause on GP.
Yeah.
It makes everything taste great. And you can add a little bit of zhuzh to it by adding the little frothy thing. Z
Oh,
talked
you know I
about
love my
that.
frother.
Z loves her
You know I love
frother.
my frother.
And using a loose leaf tea sachets, and tea bags is the easiest way to use to get your chai flavor in there. So there's pumpkin puree, which I mentioned, all the four spices, brown sugar, and any kind of milk that you want. So mixing all those things together, we'll post the link so you guys can check it out. But we wanted to give a different twist on how to make some tea this time. So,
Yeah, and I would say this like first I was like, oh shit, pumpkin, that's the basic bitch drink.
ba-
But this is not a basic bitch drink. I mean, you got to
exactly.
get some pumpkin puree
Puree, y'all.
and get real fancy with it. And if
Hmm.
you can get the canned version, but if you really trying to take it even up a notch, take that pumpkin that you was gonna carve for the babies,
Ooh, what?
take that scoop out, and,
Hmm.
and mix it on up, puree
Okay.
it on up, and there you go.
Mix
And
it up.
there you
It'll be
go.
yummy. It'll be lovely. It'll give you warm and fuzzy feelings for the remainder of the season.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes,
Hmm.
ma'am.
So what we got on hot tea?
We got a couple things. Tonight
Mm-hmm.
is verses. So tonight
That's
is KRS-One and Big
right.
Daddy Kane. Um,
What?
yes. So
What?
yes. So to get myself a little hype
Yo,
for
that's dope.
this show, I listened. So Title, if you have Title,
Uh-huh.
Title has already put the playlist on their essential tracks
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
their site. So they have a KRS-One essential tracks and a Big Daddy Kane essential tracks.
Ooh,
And
these
I was
youngins not
listening
gonna
to
know
it.
what to do with that. They don't even
Yes.
know. They
No, they
just
don't.
not a clue.
Not a clue. So we were listening to that this morning. That was my cleaning music. Some people
Nice.
clean to gospel, and I clean to rap. So there you
Nice.
have it.
I love it.
And last night was Bougie Bonton, but they didn't. And Barrington Levy was there, but they
What?
didn't. Yeah, it was a versus, but they didn't. It wasn't on the IG versus, so you had to
Boo.
have the app that they have. You have to buy like their monthly subscription.
To
It was
get
like two
that.
ninety nine, and it was at the Barclay Center. And so there are clips from that. I think Barrington Levy was there. I'm
Oh.
pretty sure that's who I saw, but I
Buju.
knew it was yeah.
Mm.
But it was that was last night. I heard it was really good.
Oh, I might have to check
I'm
that out.
Yeah, tonight's battle is at the Barclay Center,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see how this is all going to be.
Sounds good.
And it wasn't so Super Cat wasn't a battle. It was more like I'm Super Cat. This is versus, you know.
Basically. He can do that
Yeah,
because he's super cat.
exactly.
Boop,
So
boop, boop, boop.
basically, so
Shout out to my yardies.
yes, ma'am. I'm gonna skip a little bit in my order because the one thing I know that we're going to talk about is probably going to take a lot of time. So, if you're looking for something to watch, I watched these two docu series, very short, on white women getting over. One was the Lulu Rich. It's on Amazon. It's about the Lulu Row company and how they basically finessed suburban white women into buying into a pyramid scheme or
Wow.
multi-level marketing strategy.
Really?
Yes. And it's very interesting because the company is still in existence today. But to
Mm-hmm.
hear the stories of the employees that work there and that still work there, to see how they did bonuses. Like there were people who were clearing $1.4 million.
What?
Yes.
What kind of multi-marketing level scheme is that?
Because it was all about getting people under you, because that's what all these pyramid
Well,
schemes
yeah.
are, just to have people under you to really do the work, and then you reap all the benefit. And
Right.
really in these they show you that only the top tier, so it was like only like the top 1% of
Like
these companies,
society.
well, just this company
Yeah.
was making money, and everybody else was like actually losing money. They were
So
in
you
the
got to
red.
get in at the beginning, and after that,
Basically, you got to
you,
finesse in the beginning.
gotcha, gotcha.
Get in when it starts so
Right.
that you can finesse. So that was really good. And then I watched this other one on HBO Max about, it was called The Way Down, and Way, Weigh, about the Remnant
Oh,
Church in Tennessee and how their founder was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and her hair as the years grew on got bigger and bigger and bigger. This is just a total shit show. And if
oh
you're a
my.
religious person, I can see you being very upset. My husband and I watched it together, and he said, this whole time I've never heard her say a Bible verse. She ain't never quote
Ooh,
a Bible verse. I ain't never see her have a Bible. All she did was preach about being skinny.
what?
Yeah, being skinny, being submissive to your husband, and being skinny. So take a
Wow.
gander at it if you want to.
It's
It
called The Way
was
Down.
yeah, The Way Down, Weigh. It's on
Okay,
HBO
I'm gonna have to
Max.
I'm gonna check that out.
So, and I mean, if you look at it, it's pretty much how all these mega churches operate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna say that. So when you see it, you'll know. But this is more like a cult. Like the way that they operate was kind of cult like. So if you're looking for something really to watch, really short, You is back on Netflix. I'm watching that right now.
Oh yes, I saw.
Yes.
I just started
So
again.
I'm watching that. Eve is pregnant. So the pit bull in the skirt got a pit bull in the
Woo,
belly.
woo, woo, woo.
So
Yay, I'm so happy for her.
I'm happy for her. I'm happy for her and her husband because I know they've been trying.
For a
I know they've been
while.
trying for a while and there were some issues. So
Like past
congrats
10
to her.
years. And
Yeah.
she's a bonus mom and
Mhm.
all that stuff that comes with that. And being a bonus mom and deciding if you're going to have kids or how that's going to,
Look.
pan out and look. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
So then Adele has a new single out. It's called Be Easy on Me. It's
Be
you know,
easy.
if you're an Adele fan, you're just gonna love it because it's Adele. If you're not like a if you like it's just like with Beyonce, right? There are people who die hard for Beyonce and she never and they never think she has a bad song, right?
Ever.
Ever. Or if you're a Nicki Minaj, if you're a Barb's, like Nicki Minaj can
Mm-hmm.
do no wrong. So if you're an Adele like super fan, she can do no wrong. So even though the song sounds very similar to her other songs,
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to be like, "Oh my god, this is the best song ever." I like it. I've already
Mm-hmm.
learned the words.
Okay. Okay.
I sing it in a British accent because my
Oh, darling, is that true?
yeah. So I sing it in a British accent and I love it.
Oh, I love it. That's a British accent.
Yes, I do. Even though she sings it in an English
Right.
accent.
I was going to ask that, but okay.
Yes,
I'm going to
she
let
sings
you
it in
embrace.
an yes. She sings it in an American accent.
Yes.
I decided to sing in a
The
British
British.
accent.
Cheerio,
So
tip tip.
exactly. She's lost a lot of weight. She looks
Yes.
amaze balls, and you know Adele can do no wrong. So as soon as my good sis puts that link for them concert tickets, I will be purchasing too, and I will do it like I did with Beyonce. I'm gonna find somebody to go so we could be singing "Rolling
Rolling
in the
in the
Deep."
deep.
The fact that we both sang that at the same time, not knowing that is the song,
With the shoulder roll. We both did shoulder rolls, y'all.
that is crazy. And so then lastly, right? Dave Chappelle. He has a special on Netflix
Hmm.
called The Closer. And I initially said I wasn't going to talk about this because I feel like it's been talked about to death. But here is what I'm going to say about it. I'm a Dave Chappelle fan, and I'm also an ally of the LGBTIA plus community.
Hmm.
Not so much an advocate because I'm not out on the streets with
Right.
signs and stuff like that. So I am definitely an ally.
Right there
And I
with you.
know that me saying that for some is kind of like hypocrisy, right?
Hmm.
Because how can I support the LGBTQ community and still be a fan of Dave Chappelle? I'm going to say this. You watch, I feel like there are people who've been commenting on the special that have not seen the special on both sides, on the Dave Chappelle side and on the other side. And the reason why I say that is because the LGBTQ community they wrote Dave Chappelle off a very long time ago, right? So I can't see them watching this
Right.
episode or this particular. I can't see them watching this unless they really wanted to be objective and say, okay, yeah, now I'm done.
Right.
So I feel like watch it and then make whatever decision you want to make about it. And if you have feelings about it, then you are entitled to those feelings. And you can have those feelings and feel justified in having those feelings. But I feel like we need to get away from if I don't agree with you, then you're not an ally. We can't be friends. You're wrong. And I don't want to have anything to do with you. I just want to cancel you. Because I feel like in all of these situations, there's a teaching moment.
Agreed.
And I feel like even though I did not find the special funny, I, it wasn't one of his best. I was never in there like laughing. I do feel like he used it as a platform just to tell the LGBTQ community to kiss his ass because it's not like he's not a fan of them. He's just a comedian, and that's not right or wrong. I'm just saying that
Hmm.
was his viewpoint, and he did say some things that were thought provoking, like the LGBTQ community does have a backing behind it that black people don't,
Correct.
and that is white privilege. And so they are able to advocate and lobby for themselves at a more successful rate than black people are
Hmm.
because of that white privilege that they have, right?
Right. And there's a lot of racism within. the LGBTQ
Right. And
community.
he asked, he said, can a gay person be racist? Absolutely.
Hmm.
And he said, he's talking about those individuals who use their white privilege as a weapon,
Mm.
even though they're in a minority group.
Hmm.
And that is something that needs to be discussed. And I will say that that is absolutely true. Um, and because we also know that within that community, there is a lot of issues.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
and if you've ever watched Pose, you'll see in the 80s, early 90s, you could, if you were black and gay, there are absolutely places you could not go
Of course. Yes,
at
yes,
all.
yes.
And he said he liked the Stonewall gays. Like he
Hmm.
said those were his favorites because they didn't give a shit. They just went out there.
Right. Spoke
Um,
their mind.
and they weren't easily offended
Hmm.
or easily, like, things, words didn't hurt their feelings. It was
Hmm.
more about action.
Right.
And I would say you could say the same thing with blacks in the civil rights movement. I think that the 60s blacks are different than
The
the
today's
2000
blacks.
blacks.
Yeah. I would I would be inclined to agree with
Definitely
you.
cut from a different cloth. Definitely
Hmm.
not the same type of skin. You could not take this generation and put it in the 60s and expect them to be able to do
Right.
what Martin Luther King and then was doing.
The king.
That's my opinion. But and there's also freedom of speech. And as someone with a law background and someone who actually, if things went different, I probably would have loved to be a constitutional lawyer
Hmm.
because I do love the Constitution, the concept of it, and how me and you could be reading the same thing and interpret it totally
Completely
different.
differently. Yeah.
Um,
Same ship, different sides.
exactly. Which is the basis for a lot of these arguments that you find in the Supreme Court, right?
Hmm.
This is why you'll never have a Supreme Court that's all nine unless it's like blatantly obvious, right? It's
Right.
always going to be split 5-4 or 6-3 or whatever, and it's basically on party lines, like if it's a conservative
Hmm.
judge or a liberal judge. So I'm someone who understands what freedom of speech actually means, and I understand that what he said is well within that. So you can't
Hmm.
censor the man. You may not like him, but you can't
Right.
censor him because he's not saying anything that's inciting riots. He's not saying anything that's
Mm.
dangerous to the
Mm.
point where somebody is going to kill somebody.
Start insurrection.
Right. Start insurrection, storm the Capitol.
Stuff like that. It's not
Right.
on that level.
Mm-mm. Kill people. Because you're telling them to go do these things.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I implore everyone. I know I'm getting a little off, but I implore everyone to take a look at the first 10 amendments, which we know to be the Bill of Rights. Well, I hope so, or the American public system has failed us all.
Right.
Look at the 13th Amendment, look at the 14th Amendment, and look at the 15th Amendment. And when you look at those, those amendments are the crux of all of the bullshit that is happening in this country.
Mm.
Everything. And dare I say, one, two, and three,
Hmm.
and five. Like, even with the Bill of Rights, you could probably narrow it down. And I would just say educate and then come back.
Right.
Have an educated conversation. And if you don't like Dave Chappelle, if you hate him, fine. But I really also would like to get away from cancel culture. Can we stop trying to
Oh,
cancel everybody because we don't
yes.
agree with them
Just because
or
you don't
agree with
agree
their.
does not mean they're like the devil's spawn. Because what if
Mm-mm.
they don't agree with you? Then they're calling you the devil's spawn, and you're looking at them like, what? Everybody, you just can't. It's just some of y'all. It's just everyone is just. I think it's a little too sensitive.
Right. Now, there are cases I say, like, there are red flags for me. So if you are listening to this and I'm saying things that are red flags to you, and you're like, I can't deal with Ruth anymore, that's your prerogative, and I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you come to me and tell me you still listen to R. Kelly, that's a red flag to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I can really associate with you at a level that I may have associated with you before
Might be a
because of my
change.
strong beliefs and convictions. And that's all I'm saying. But I'm not going to cancel you. Who am I to cancel you? I'm not
Right.
God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not your maker. And I
Mm.
don't understand where as a society got to thinking we had this much power,
Whew. Yeah. To dictate other people's lives based on your perception and
and your
opinion.
moral compass and your
Right.
belief.
It's a
And
monolith. We are not monoliths, so we
we're not.
have to be respectful and mindful, unless, of course, it's directly at you and cursing you. Like you just y'all got to chill with that.
You really do. And I have, this is my belief system. My moral compass is, how does it affect me personally?
Mm-hmm.
If it does not affect me personally, I don't give a shit. I don't. And I'm
Right.
not saying that in a bad, I just don't. I'm pro choice. Why? Not because I want everybody out here to go get abortions, because it's none of my goddamn business
Thank
what you
you.
do
With
with
your
your
who?
damn body.
Hello. I don't know why people all up in each the other people's hoo ha and what they're doing with it
You
when it's
and
convenient.
hello, you getting an abortion has nothing to do with me.
Mm-mm.
Now, on the flip side, people will say, well, my body, my choice with the vaccine. Absolutely your body, your choice.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? You not getting vaccinated does and can have an
In
effect on
effect.
me.
Thank you.
And so I will have an opinion about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I will feel some type of way about that because it could potentially have a negative impact on me and my loved ones.
Thank you.
So let's put everything into context here.
Please.
Legalize marijuana? Yes. Why? Because that ain't got shit to do with me.
Hello. Hello. Mm-hmm.
Because y'all out here with alcohol drinking and driving and been drinking and driving for years.
Mm. And that is a drug, y'all. Just so y'all know.
And
Just
ain't nobody got no issues with that. Ain't had no issues with that. Grandpa
mm-hmm.
stay drinking and driving.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't care. Be real with yourself. A lot of us, and a lot of you have been listening, have definitely got behind the wheel a little intoxicated, a little inebriated, a little bit more than you should have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want legalize, if you don't want marijuana to be legalized, then alcohol definitely should not.
Facts. Cause
Definitely. But I'm on a tangent. I'm just saying freedom of speech, but also know that you have the ability to make, well, freedom of speech, but also make an informed
thank you. Do your research.
decision. Do your research and then comment.
Right.
Don't comment if you haven't even watched it
Mm.
on either side, because there's a lot of people sticking up for Dave Chappelle and like, oh, y'all just, but did you watch the special?
Right.
Because they have a right. Maybe they did hear something, and because you're not a part of that community,
Mm-hmm.
you can't hear it. Sometimes these
Right.
dog whistles.
Yes, that is true. Within the LGBTQ community, there are definite things that make them a little bit more hyper aware of certain
Mm-hmm.
things, and then they discuss that within their own communities. So
Yes. So
just be
just saying,
informed.
very informed. But that's it. So we're gonna take a quick break and move into our topic of the day.
And we are back. So, topic colorism. How is it? How far have we really come in the Black community, if at all? Right. So, once a taboo topic, it has been defined, or it can be defined, as the intra-racial discrimination and privilege system based on skin color and other phenotypical characteristics, hair, broadness of nose, lip thickness, and we see this manifested in various areas of society, but with we're speaking to within our own respective race. Regarded in the Black community as commonplace, unfortunately, and continues to divide and impact the identity and self esteem primarily of Black girls that we're speaking to today and the community as a whole. It definitely, for generations, has produced inequality amongst Black Americans over decades, and it's significantly associated with household income, based on studies and research that we've been doing, educational attainment, occupational status. With darker skin tone Blacks, Americans unfortunately are faring far worse than their counterparts, than their light skinned counterparts. Uh, and historically, we see this playing out now. Darker skinned Blacks unfortunately seem to have harsher prison sentences, are more negatively stereotyped, and we see this. I mean, it's we're about to become on Halloween, right? Inevitably, and I do not understand. Z, help me out with this. Every single freaking year, there is somebody's picture that comes up with a black face. Every year, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know that it was it." Really, every single Halloween, there's somebody comes out with a white face, a black face. That
It's a white
right
face.
with a white face, with a black face that usually is white person, and then
Hmm.
they act like it's brand new, like they didn't know. Like I don't understand.
Right.
And the experience of discrimination is at a rate of 11 times that of their lighter skin tone counterparts. And you all out here black facing folks. I don't get it. Like you just knew. But in respect to the specific colorism theory, it provides a general framework for understanding the implications of skin tone within racial groups in U.S. society. Skin tone bias or colorism is a system of discrimination based on privileging individuals with light skin tone and devaluing the individuals with dark skin tone. And this is pervasive and since, my goodness, slavery times. And there's two categories within that. There's interracial, whereas a member of one racial group discriminates based on the skin color of a member belonging to a different racial group. And then there's intra, which is racial groups within. So a light skin black and a dark skin black individual, right?
Hmm.
So, like I had mentioned, it's unfortunately started slavery days,
Yes.
as in
And
that
so,
part.
yes, that part. And when we talk about history and origin, like Natalie said, it started from slavery. It was born from racism and white society's gaze. You know, children of slavery who were byproducts of rape
Mm-hmm.
were, we know, more favored by the slave owners,
Mm-hmm.
and were allowed to work in a house. And that's where you hear house Negro, field Negro, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the the lighter skinned slaves who were favored by the slave owners were predominantly given what they would consider better work.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Lighter work, or not as clearly not as strenuous.
exactly. So the biological differences of skin color was used as a justification for oppression and enslavements of Africans by European colonizers. We've seen this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, color has been used as a social hierarchy that aligns, of course, whites and lighter skinned black people at the top and then blacks at the bottom. And then
Mm-hmm.
the inferiority associated with blackness has translated into socially constructed ideas about skin tone.
Mm-hmm.
And these things continue to shape identity, status, and opportunity for the African American community. And
Every
we see
day.
this every day. So there are things that we've heard of growing up to kind of water down or to, I want to say water down, but to distinguish whether somebody was black
Mm-hmm.
from being white. And we've heard that the one drop rule, right?
Yep.
Even if you had the smallest amount of
Smallest.
African ancestry, you were going to be legally defined as black.
Yep. Regardless of your
And
other parent.
regardless, one drop. And the enforcement of the one drop rule equalized all blacks in the eyes of the law.
Mm-hmm.
However, in everyday practice, there are significant differences developed between blacks of varying skin tones, hair textures, and facial features. And we know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's apparent and it's unfortunate. I remember thinking about the one drop rule, and I was like, wow, like literally, that was just distinguish. Like you could be the fairest of the fair, and I mean
Mm-hmm.
there are other terms for it, right? Octoroon and all of
Oh
these
yeah, with
things.
the octoroon balls, yeah,
Exactly.
and the fact they made it legal
Yes,
just with the one
yes.
drop rule.
Um, so then we go to the paper bag test, and
Mm-hmm.
this was often utilized more so in black spaces, in the hiring and admission of
Yep.
black people into certain spaces. So
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, fraternities and sororities have used this.
Very much.
I've done some history. I've researched, and I know AKs and alphas
Mm-hmm.
were unfortunately big
Perpetuators of this.
yes, perpetuators of the brown paper bag test.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And then, we had the doll test, where
Mm,
this was first done in the 40s, where they gave African American children two dolls, one that was white and one that was painted black.
mm,
And overwhelmingly, the African American children would prefer the white doll to the black baby, and they would associate positive attributes to the white baby, like smart or pretty.
mm,
The black doll was usually seen as bad
mm,
or dirty.
mm.
And they've done this with other races, right? They've done this across the board, and generally,
Yep.
overwhelmingly, the black always attributed with negative stereotypes.
That right there is the crux of what we're talking about. Like from childhood, it's children have been indoctrinated to think that. So it's not necessarily a surprise by the time individuals are adults. They may have preferences whether they're aware of them or not and why they do what they do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's unfortunate how you unfortunately perceive that, and then there's no counter argument
Right.
that you have to pour into your children, but we'll get into that later.
Right. So we can actually, no, we can get into it now. We can talk about the
Mhm.
present day and the mental health effects that we see within the black community when it comes to to colorism.
So speaking to that, and we all know, unfortunately, it's very well established that the experiences of everyday discrimination have detrimental effects on mental health. We know that postpartum. I'm sorry, PTSD definitely presents itself. There's a book called Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I can't remember the author right now, but it speaks to some of the things that we talked about historically till present day and how that affects how we interact with each other and with among other blacks, skin tones, how we refer to one another, how we talk about each other in the house, and then there's a component of the perceived discrimination, and is definitely related to psychological distress, depressive symptoms, anxiety disorders, and major depressive disorders. And you compile that, and it compounds the fact that black people don't want to talk about going to talk to anybody about being
Hmm.
depressed.
Hmm.
So that is that much more magnified because we don't get
Hmm.
to, as far as society, I mean, until recently, black people don't get depressed. People don't get sad. You don't,
Right.
we just go and pray about it or something or make a joke about it. Or, it's either or, but there's never a let's deal with it where it is right now, you
Right.
know? And then from that also comes the microaggressions that are interwoven into how you look at yourself, how people refer to you, and that adds another layer of discrimination that isn't blatant, but that kind of needles you into feeling or say feeling like, wait, did somebody just say something to me? It's like
Hmm.
it's real slick, and whether they mean it or not, but it can definitely get under your skin.
Right.
And with the darker skin tone Black Americans, like we said, they fare way worse than lighter skinned Black Americans in sense of self-rated mental health and depression. However, there's a paradox. So among blacks that do exhibit, they exhibit better mental health responses and outcomes than whites, given even though they're an unexpected pattern of disproportionate exposure, because we know within the white community, going to get therapy is a thing. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go talk to my therapist or whatever. And sometimes it's the outcomes for some whites is really great, but for blacks who normally don't go to get therapy, when they do get therapy, they have better outcomes. And it's spoken to or attributed to their social ties, their family base, their support centers. Um, but there's scarce empirical research in this regard, so it's something that's still being developed and looked at. And
Right.
then, and that also feeds into self-esteem.
It does, and you think about that, right? It's interesting that there is that paradox that although African Americans, you know, we have this exposure to psychosocial stressors, right?
Mhm.
And you would think that those things would make us unable to function and cope, and they do. But that once we work through them, we have these better outcomes, and our self esteem can come sometimes improve.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, the colorism can play a huge role in low self esteem of Black Americans, from individuals to relationships, and it
Mhm.
can even expand to societal status. And these things start young, right? Children attach their self worth and attractiveness sometimes to the color of their skin.
Yes.
And you can go back into your childhood and think about,
Mhm.
unfortunately, all the darker skinned children that may have been in your neighborhood or in your elementary school, and think about how poorly they were
Mm.
treated. And we always say, well, kids will be kids, and
Mm-mm.
that's just how kids are. And it's not, because that is something that was ingrained in them. Someone told
Yeah.
them to look at color as a negative thing,
Mm-hmm.
and to use that person's color against them as an insult.
Mm-hmm.
So that starts
Mm-hmm.
very young,
Very,
right?
very young. Like,
And then
mm.
it just grows, and it grows and it grows,
Mm-hmm.
because it's never a space for darker skinned African Americans to really see themselves represented in a positive light. If you look at TV shows, the cops and the robbers are always the dark skinned.
Mm-hmm. They're dressed in black, and the
Right,
savior's always in white, and
right. And we'll
mm.
talk about that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
um Studies have reported that colorism affects darker skinned women from working classes, and darker skinned women who were judged unattractive than their male counterparts. So it seems like, even though, again, you have colorism when we're talking about black and white,
Mm-hmm.
but think about this. So we have black and we have white. So as a population of people, we already are discriminated against based off the color of our skin. And
Right.
then within
Off the
that,
break.
right, we break ourselves down
Further.
further to alienate those who are darker skinned and relegate
Mm-hmm.
them to the bottom of the totem pole,
Mm-hmm.
while we push the lighter skinned individuals farther up.
Yeah.
Um, and then we see this in a lot of different cultures and societies. Bleaching has become something that's very popular. I saw like I think it was, I don't know if it was on 60 Minutes, it was on, or Vice or something, and they were
Mm-hmm.
talking about how Jamaicans and Africans
Mm-hmm.
have taken to bleaching at very unhealthy rates, and like what they do to bleach their skin. Like it was like bleaching cream and Vaseline and like saran wrap, and they like
Mm-hmm.
wrap their whole body in it, and they like sit in it. It's just,
Yeah. It's a
and
lot.
it's a lot.
It's
And
a lot.
for some people, it helps their self esteem because their skin has gotten lighter. So they just automatically attribute, now people are going to see me as worthy because my skin is lighter,
Yeah,
right?
my family is Jamaican, and my family had told me a story, which I had heard before, but I'd forgotten until I was like going through this again. So my grandfather is fair skinned, and my grandmother is very dark skinned. His family, who's his my great grandfather is white and Jewish, very I think most of the family is white on his side, and then his mother was black. But when my grandfather was getting ready to marry, he had left Cuba and moved back to Jamaica to marry my grandmother. That family was not happy about it at all. And they gave my grandmother the blues most of their marriage until they divorced. And then his next wife was light like you if you saw her walking down the street, you wouldn't know she was black. She was just that much fairer. And then also on my grandmother's side, on my mother's side, then there were quite a few white individuals, white Jamaicans and what have you, from Britain and Europe or whatever. And my grandmother's brother is so fair. I wouldn't, if I would walk past him, I would have no idea that he was black. And those were conversations on both sides of my family um, that usually comes into play. And then those conversations kind of trickle down because most of the females in my family are very fair skinned. And then there's some that are on the other opposite. My sister is a couple shades darker than me. And within my family, it wasn't necessarily talked about. We were made aware of it because it was very apparent that we were two different skin tones, that people would see my sister and didn't know that was my sister when I was younger. And then
Right.
being in high school, I was the only black girl, but I was still light. But white people would be like, "Oh, Natalie, I got a tan. And I look like you." And I didn't have any other frame of reference for the skin tone business. And then they were just like, "Oh, I'm just as tan as you." I would take pictures and I would blend in. And there were you would hear comments here and there from families, "Are you such a pretty girl? You brown skin or you red bone?" And I didn't think of that until we really got started talking about this topic because it's something that I've heard most of my life, but it's never really my sister would see it differently than I do
Mm-hmm.
because of how the conversations were had in the household. But it wasn't to be malicious. It was of just what they knew.
I would have to talk to my sister, because my sister is a few shades darker than me. So I would have to talk to her about whether colorism really existed in our family. My grandmother had made some. My grandma was a darker skinned woman, and she would make some comments, but I don't know if the comments were like, I don't know, but she just would make some comments. She would make
Right.
some comments, and I would have to see if my sister felt like her skin tone was brought up in a negative way, or if it
Mm-hmm.
ever had a negative impact on her. I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure. I mean, my sister helps with the editing of this, so she'll be like, "Oh yeah,"
Right.
she'll probably tell me, "Yeah, this happened and this happened and this happened."
Mm-hmm.
I know that my sister did experience racism
Mm-hmm.
at a higher level than I've
Mine,
ever
mine
experienced.
too. Mine too.
My sister in middle school got chased home. Um, she got called a nigger.
Mine too.
She had somebody pissed on her book bag.
Oh, good
Now,
God.
I will say my sister beat the boy up, but
My
of
sister
course,
too.
yes, it was a boy, of course, because it's always
Yeah, so
boys.
boys.
And don't get me into why white boys fetishize black women, even at a
Yes.
young age, and don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to address that. So it turns out to be violent. But we'll
Right.
talk about that at another point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But she got kicked off the bus. And I guarantee you that was because they just automatically assumed she was black, so she was
Mm-hmm.
in the wrong.
My sister got suspended.
Yeah. So, it's unfortunate that this happened, and it's sad because I never even really thought about it. And I'm not saying like I never thought that colorism existed. I'm well aware that colorism existed, but I'm pretty sure that when you look at our group of friends range in
Mm-hmm.
shades from very light to where you don't know if they're black or they could be attributed to Spanish or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, to dark, because they are from they're from Africa, like for real, like not through the slave ships Africa,
Right. Right.
born and raised in
In
Africa.
Africa, the continent
So
of Africa.
right. And so I'm pretty sure if we had these conversations with them, our experiences in the same settings and the same environments
Would
are
be.
probably very different.
Mm-hmm. Very. And it's so interesting with this conversation, and you guys had a resource about the Red Table Talk with their Stefans. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a comment about Kwamo, I can't,
Karamo.
Karamo,
Mm-hmm.
about his grandmother telling him, don't go outside and
And
make
darken up
and
my
darken
house.
up your house.
Mm-hmm.
And the discussion was that was clearly pointed because the rest of his family, his sisters, were much fairer than him.
Mm-hmm.
But then the discussion went to, is she trying to protect him, to
Mm-hmm.
remind him that he's a black, the darker he is, the harder he's going to have it. But she said it in such a way that don't don't go outside, and he developed a complex about it
Yeah.
without understanding, without her explaining, look, if you're a darker male, you're going to have a harder life. But it
Right.
doesn't come out that way. And you know what I mean? Even with my house, even with my household, my mother always was like, you remember you're black. Even though
Right.
you may not look this, that, the other, you're black. At the end of the day, people will only see you first off as black.
Right. Well, I mean, I look at it like this. You in Karamo's situation, right? I don't ever see that. I can't even see that as being, even though in her mind, his grandma's mind, telling him not to go outside to get tanned,
Mm-hmm.
go outside in the sun and get darker because
Right.
it's going to be a problem. It's still problematic in
Of
itself, even if
course.
you think it's helping, because he shouldn't have to change who
Mm-hmm.
he is or try to lessen his color because other people are going to have a problem with it,
Right.
right? Like I shouldn't have to keep fitting into what your standard
Mm-hmm.
of beauty or
Yes.
acceptability is. That's bullshit.
Very.
That's bullshit,
Mm.
And we look at this in a lot of ways, speaking of this, in jobs and opportunities.
Very much so. And it goes in line with the black elites. So even go through generations. You have the lighter skinned blacks, they're down in the south that migrate to the north. They're afforded a lot of different opportunities. Like we said, it falls into colleges because the lighter skinned blacks were afforded the opportunity to go to school. And then that kind of perpetuated the paper bag test, which then perpetuated them to be able to go on and get jobs and create a life for themselves that were afforded many more opportunities than their dark skinned counterparts, and have access to wealth and then also seen as less threatening. And that's where you kind of develop the Oaks Bluff, the Inkwell, the Martha's Vineyard, the respective social groups that earlier in the past years. Most of, if you look at their pictures of those organizations, they are extremely fair black people, and
Mm-hmm.
everything is connected to, like, the book Lawrence Otis Graham, Our Kind of People, and looking at that, and you see the break up and break down, if you will, of how the different shades were seen in different groups. And then the creation even of, within these black elites, was the creation of Jack and Jill, so that
Mm.
they had their own group within, so that their children could be exposed to just those that, had those same opportunities that
Right.
generationally were afforded because of the historical context of slavery.
Right. And
You
I think
know.
if you look at that when you're talking about organizations, like unfortunately when we're talking about fraternities and sororities,
Mm-hmm.
there is still a stigma and a stereotype that AKAs
Mm-hmm.
are just going to be, they're going to look a certain way, they're
Yes.
going to be a certain way. And there are, I'm not going to say that there aren't a lot of women that fall into that box,
Mm-hmm.
but not everybody.
Right.
Or that deltas are going to look a certain way
Right.
and zetas are going to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there, for people who like, for me, I'm a legacy two times over, right? As an AKA, my mom's an AKA, my grandmother's an AKA. So it was never, I'm not gonna say it was never an option. I never saw anything else, and I
Mm-hmm.
understood the organization and what it stood for, and I understood how it started. So for me, AK was the only way. But what
Mm-hmm.
if you don't come from a family that's heavily
Yeah.
rooted in fraternities and sororities,
Mine
and you
wasn't.
just hear the stereotypes like
Mm-hmm.
AKAs only accept light skinned women,
Yes.
Deltas only accept dark skinned women. Well, Deltas accept dark skinned women. Zetas, I don't know. And Sigma Gamma Rose, I don't know. Because
Right.
that was never, it was either AKs or Deltas. And
Right.
the other
Either
two
or.
was just, it
Not
was
an
either
option.
or. And I'm
Right.
not saying anything against Zetas or Sigma Gamma Rose because I know women in both organizations that are great women. But I'm just saying, even with that, there was a perpetuation of
Mm-hmm.
these are the elites and everything else is we don't even pay attention to.
Right.
So if you're someone who's of darker skin, you probably don't even, you may want it to be an AKA, but felt
Mm-hmm.
because of the stereotype and because of the brown paper bag test.
Right.
And I have a story, but I can't share it, so I'm gonna move with the brown paper bag test. But I know, that there are, people who probably got turned off by that
Mm-hmm.
particular stereotype. Like, I'm not going to join this organization
Yes.
because they only cater to lighter skinned
Mm-hmm.
people.
Right.
And that's unfortunate.
Extremely. I mean, there's historical rooting in it, but it doesn't have to continue to be that way. So
No.
it's left up to the members of that organization to dispel um, that thought process
Right.
in moving forward. You know.
Right. You were talking about with jobs and opportunities. There are just a couple other things I think you were about to go into before
Yeah,
I
because
interrupted you.
it's all good. But it's in speaking to the opportunities, there's definitely a difference in pay rates between darker skinned people
Mm,
and lighter skin. And that's definitely apparent within the male population, and it mirrors the difference between and that difference mirrors the difference in pay between whites and blacks, which we already know is proven fact, point period, and it
right.
is, and that's how the situation in the society currently is. And then a lot of light skinned blacks, historically, based on all of the things we've already said, end up having a higher income, and they complete more years of schooling, and they live in better neighborhoods, all because all of these things build on top of each other. And especially, I will say this is a big one, when President Obama was elected. He's our
The
first black,
colorism at its finest.
at its finest. Our first black president was light skinned, suggesting that he may not have been elected. He wouldn't have had the same opportunities had he been a little bit darker. And we really had to sit down and think about that. And it's like the whole one drop rule was on display because he had two parents. His lived with his mother who was white, but they're like, he's a black president. Before anything else, completely discounted his mother as being the
But
other spouse, as the other
he
parent.
he identified, and that's the
Right,
thing,
I
he
agree.
identified himself as black. And the problem I think we have as a society and as a whole is that they wanted to take that and use that as a marker
Mm-hmm.
for everything else. It was like people were like, okay, blacks are like, oh my god, I'll vote for him
Mm-hmm.
because he's a but let's be real, we have these southern liberals, we have these liberals that ain't really our kind of folk liberals. They're
Mm-hmm.
only liberal when it comes to white privilege. That only, let's keep it real, voted for Obama because of the fact that he was a lighter skinned
Mm-hmm.
black man.
So I don't seem as racist.
Exactly.
I
And
can't be
then there were
racist. I voted for Barack.
exactly because I voted for Barack. And then there are white people like I don't like him because he's black.
Yep.
Now the extra layer to that is you see his wife, who is a black woman. I'm
Hundred
talking
percent.
about ain't nothing you. Michelle is black. Okay, ass,
Yes.
lips, hips, black.
All of that.
Okay, and the things that they use to describe her
Mm.
as a
Mm.
black woman
Mm.
shows you just what we're talking about. But then that's
Exactly.
just going looking at black and white. Now let's break it down to our community. In our community, their barbershop arguments. He ain't really black. That wasn't. He ain't black.
Yes.
He mixed.
Right. He ain't a real brother. He
He
ain't
ain't real
down. He ain't
brother.
down for the cause. You
You
know.
know, and
Can't win for
that's
losing.
unfortunate. And then some people even took it a step further. They didn't take it off color, and they were like, it's about how he acts. Like acting black is a specific thing. And then and
Yes.
it was like, oh, Clinton was our first real black president. No,
Mm.
he was not.
Mm. He's a member of Phi Beta Sigma though.
Yeah, he is. Well,
He
that's
is.
probably why people think that he is.
Just saying. He's a member of Black fraternity.
Yes. So and then so looking at that, right? And I like to use Michelle and Barack as romantic, looking at our romantic
Mm-hmm.
pursuits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in certain situations, that's commonplace. Sometimes a lighter skinned male would like a darker skinned female, a
Mm-hmm.
darker skinned female like a lighter skinned male. You know, sometimes darker skinned men go after lighter skinned women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that there is an issue with it's typical to see light skinned black women as being represented as the
Beauty.
standard for beauty in the
Mm-hmm.
African American community, and therefore more highly desirable for high status spouses. And I think the reason the reason why I talked about Obama and Michelle, because that was like Michelle wasn't what you would consider the typical, or I'm not even what you could consider, what society would push forward as your typical high desired, high status
Mm-hmm. Good
wife,
point.
black woman in terms of looks.
Mm-hmm.
And we know this would say about her, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate. And, research has shown that darker skinned women are less likely to be married than lighter skinned women. In online dating, we see that there are
Mm.
issues when it comes to darker skinned women or African American women in general, just being on left off the list of racial preferences, even with African American men.
Mm. Yep. And that's
And
a whole other discussion.
a whole other discussion. Upbringings and interracial families has a huge part on your romantic pursuits. And I feel like when you're looking at it from that way, there are a lot of stereotypes that have been perpetuated that get pushed and pushed in the African American community to the point that I think some people just believe that this is so.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, in the athletic community, it seems to be commonplace that when a athlete, a successful athlete, very
Mm-hmm.
successful or not, gets married or has a woman, they are always of the lighter
Mm-hmm.
skin
Persuasion.
persuasion.
Mm-hmm. All the way
Always. If they're
till
not white. If
right,
they're not
right.
white.
Fair enough. Fair point. Fair point.
If they're not white. They're always of the lighter skin persuasion. And we've seen this with, if you look at um, Michael Jordan's ex-wife, his current wife.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Scottie Pippen's ex-wife. Look at
Mm-hmm.
Shaq's ex-wife.
Dr.
I think
Dre's
Dwayne Wade.
ex-wife.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about sports. If you look at Dwayne Wade has the most. I would say Gabrielle Union is what you
Mm-hmm.
would say a regular way around the way girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at Chris Bosh. You look at Kobe. I mean, you could go down the list, and
Yeah.
it's always the lighter, fairer skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is just like that is like a mentality that's just held our community
It's
and
in their
has not let
upbringing.
go.
Right.
Right,
It's in the upbringing.
right.
You know, whether like what we were talking about with our respective families with Zarifa saying, you know, when you look at the obviously we're ladies, but on the male point of view, what is seen as beauty? How were we raised in our households to view blackness and how that is associated with beauty? And
Pop
because
culture.
exactly, and you looking at social media, you see how it's been interwoven into with sports, which is which captures the attention obviously of our males, and then music
Mm.
and anything in social media. The looking at the Straight Out of Compton casting alone, and I brought that up with the whole Dr. Dre or whatever. But group they had four different groups of how they were casting women to be in this movie. Group A was multicultural, which would be like Kim Kardashian viewpoint, that look. Group B was looking at Beyonce type, and C, medium to light skin, those that had weaves, and group D, they were looking for black women, sorry, that were poor, not in shape, and medium to dark skin between the ages of 18 and 30. So that alone has already been indoctrinated into
Mm-hmm.
that the film industry. And we see it with video vixens, like back at the I mean now of course it's been that way. If you just like look at BET, all the video vixens had hair long down to their behind, but they still had African features as far as
Mm-hmm.
a big booty, a small waist, lips, thighs,
Well,
all that.
right, but it's in artist development and investment as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see the money and the marketing machine behind those artists that are lighter skinned and
Mm-hmm.
fair toned than you do with the darker skinned, very talented individuals. Like if
Right.
you look at, for example, Normani. Normani is excellent. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand why she isn't like a bigger
Bigger.
star than what she is right now.
Agreed. Because she's been
Um,
out for a while.
Right. And I mean, yes, they're pushing it, but they're not pushing it, in my opinion, hard enough. Like, there are some female rappers right now in this day and age that are trash. And I think the only reason why they're getting the airplay and the
Mm-hmm.
recognition is because of how they look. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
What's
Because,
marketable?
right, you cannot tell me that Big Lotto or what's that little girl's name that, even though I like the song, there's a whole lot of money in this motherfucker.
Oh, the
Bia, Bia,
Bia,
that's
Bia,
it. Yeah,
Bia.
Bia, Bia.
Uh,
Like, I like that song,
yes.
but if you look at her and then compare her to Rhapsody, why isn't Rhapsody a bigger
Mm-hmm.
draw? We know why.
Even in just like you look at R&B and then you look at the neo soul component
Yeah.
of social media. Mostly you look at the Ari Lennoxes and I mean, yes, there's Snow Allegra, but you usually unfortunately see it split that the neo soul more embracing your blackness, the darker skin artists are elevated within that realm,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
And
yeah,
it's unfortunate, and we do this to ourselves because we
yes,
perpetuate it to
mm-hmm,
ourselves. There's something I do. I never talk about Charlie's skin tone, and when I ask her to describe people to me, I never tell her, well, what color are they? I never say that. I ask her to point out the features that will help me to know who she's talking about. So
mm-hmm.
sometimes she'll be like, "Mommy, they look like me," and then I'll see the little kid she talking about. Like, the little girl don't look like me. What you talking about? But I understand her now as to what she's like. She's talking about height, or she's talking about weight,
Right, the other
or she's talking
qualifiers.
about right, or you know. But I try to get her away from describing people based on color because I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's where it starts as well. Like, it's deep. Like in Maryland, here where we are, there is a family. I'm not going to say the family's name, but there is a family that is notorious in this area for inbreeding, and they apparently do it to keep the color
Mm-hmm.
as light as possible, to the waters, so to speak. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
in this area, if you know, you know, and I think there's even more than one family, but the one that's prominent,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people know who I'm talking about. And, that is sick,
Yeah.
right? But that's
Unhealthy on so many levels.
generational. And we have to find ways to come up out of this mindset because it
Mm-hmm.
is the year of our Lord 2021. Why are we beefing over who's lighter, who's like,
Girl. Oh, and the whole lighter and not lighter and the the if you see a black woman that is beautiful, you got to be mixed with something.
Or you
Eh,
say you're pretty for a dark skinned woman.
yes, and I
What
got
the fuck
Indian in
does
my
that mean?
family. Like,
What the
what?
fuck does
Why
that
can't it be
mean?
just that you're beautiful and black? Why does it have to be shades therein that qualify? And then if you have long hair, light skin, and you're dark skin and have long hair, oh, you is that weave? It's just I don't understand. Yeah,
We just have to do better as a community. So, how can we do better, right? How can we as a people do better with, I mean, we're not going to eradicate colorism, but we can do better
right.
as a society, as a community, to make sure that the next generation is being raised to not look at this at
Mm-hmm.
all, right? So, how do we do that? You have to have affirmations out the womb. And
Mm-hmm.
especially, unfortunately, if you have a darker skinned child, this is something you have to do because this, like the world, the way that we are, like they're
Mm-hmm.
just, you don't want your child's worth to be tied to the color of their skin. You know, we could teach our children about colorism. There are a lot of books, and I had a book, but I can't remember, about the different shades of
Mm-hmm.
people and how everybody is the same. Like,
Yeah,
we might look different on the outside, but there's so many things about us
it's the
that are
same.
uniquely the same.
Mm-hmm.
um you know, understand and keep in mind the following: that colorism isn't just about those with dark skin. It could be on the opposite side. You know, there are light skinned
Mm-hmm.
women who've
Man.
been frequently called names like red bone, light bright, and high yellow.
Yeah, but
And
you
of
think they
course,
are better than everybody else.
right,
I've had that.
right, because Big Lotto, the issue, her real rap name, if you don't know Big Lotto, trust me, you're not missing anything. But her real rap name, her original rap name was Mulatto.
Oh, that's her? That was her?
Yes, but people were saying, "Why are you calling yourself a mulatto? Like, do you understand
The
what that
negative.
means and the negative connotation that comes with that, and how, excuse me, there is so much colorism ingrained in that?"
Yes.
So she changed her name to Big Lotto,
Oh, because I
but her
remember
name is
seeing that.
Mulatto.
I saw that and I was like, that was a while ago. And I'm like, who would
Yeah,
name themselves that?
her name is Mulatto.
Do your history, folks.
Please.
Please do your
Then
history.
we need to understand that colorism doesn't only affect women, it
Mm-hmm.
does affect men, and it does affect light skinned men. Light skinned men are
Mm-hmm.
painted as soft, effeminate, snooty. I was talking about during the research that there was this meme of Prince laying down on a couch with his legs in the air, and it said, "This is how light skinned men um, do their taxes," or something like that.
Right.
And I got a chuckle out of it, but then I said, "No, like that is wrong." And
Mm-hmm.
I'm laughing at it because of the stereotype of how we portray light skinned
Right.
men. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
It's a
um,
cycle. It's self-perpetuating.
self perpetuating. Colorism is not specific to the Black American community. It is not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we went to college. I know Dominicans that have issues
Mm-hmm.
of
It's
color. That's big in the Dominican
yes, it is
Republic.
very big in the Dominican.
We have friends who went to the DR on a vacation, and they were varied in shades. And the lightest friend that was there could potentially pass as white. She had to be the one to go and make the reservations and show up first to go eat
Mm.
because they would not seat them if the other two friends went, who are darker skin.
Mm.
So she basically was like the face of the group, which is fucked up,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they do this to outsiders, just imagine what they do to their own people.
Right.
Asians, they have it in their community. It's heavy. Indians, they definitely have it, and they attribute theirs more to class. The darker you are, the lower class you
Mm-hmm.
are. And
Mm-hmm.
it is apparent. We went to college with someone who had a roommate who would powder her face lighter
Mm.
so she could be seen lighter, so she could be more suitable
Mm.
for a suitor and a
Whew.
marriage.
That self-hate that
Girl,
it causes amongst us is
it's a
just
lot. Colorism is not an acceptable form of racism, and colorism starts with our media institutions and ourselves. So representation matters. Commercials matters. TV personalities matters. I
yes.
mean, look at Viola Davis coming on the screen, and it was
Yes.
like, what? A dark skinned woman could be sexy and attractive and
Yes.
desirable? Bitch, yes.
Of
Like, what do
course,
you
cover
mean?
girl or whatever she's doing now, and I'm just like, why is it like you said, year of our Lord, 2021, and we're seeing Viola Davis coming through for a skincare regimen to promote and uplift the beauty of Black women.
Right. And you look at the situation too, and you're saying to yourself, like, we're getting away from the darker skinned woman being like the side friend that gets, all
Mm-hmm.
the insults thrown at. Look at Martin and
Yes, and
Gina,
Pam.
Pam and Martin.
Yeah.
Even in Living Single, the two darker skinned characters always were throwing insults at each other.
Yeah.
Max and Kyle.
Oh, yes.
And yes, we all got a kiki out of it and it was funny, but when you really look at it, what was that rooted in?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why did Pam always had to be called a nappy headed hoe, or a buckshot, or BDB,
BDB.
or her physical appearance was always talked about? When we know
Mm-hmm.
secretly Martin really wanted that. Let's keep it 100. But
Mm-hmm.
that's neither here nor there. So, we know colorism isn't this trivial. We can't just narrow it all down into a podcast and make it all work.
Right.
And everybody comes away kumbaya and we don't have colorism anymore. And I know that we didn't solve the world's problems when it comes to colorism, but we hope that within this, it's just a discussion. It's just to
Mm-hmm.
open the dialogue, maybe open the dialogue with your tribe, talk about some of the things that we personally talked about. See if you have been a victim of colorism or if you have yourself
Mm-hmm.
pushed
Perpetuate it.
colorism and perpetuated it on somebody else. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I laughed at that meme. I was keying it up and I was like, oh, that's kind of cringy because I'm laughing because I
Mm-hmm.
associated in that moment a light skinned man being soft. And that's not cool.
Right.
That's not right.
Mm-hmm. And then the perception of just what you think the other person thinks of you or thinks
Right.
of themselves, which you're projecting. Oh, you think that you're better than so and so because you look like this,
Right.
or you too nice to be a such and such. Like I've been told that, oh, you nice to be AKA even though you light skin. I'm like, I didn't even know what to say to that. Or I've been told, in different situations that I get preferential treatment based on my skin tone. And I'm not saying that's not the case, but there's the perception that that is the case, and it further perpetuates everything that we're talking about on both sides.
Right. And that's a good place to end on because I want to say this. It is true. Your skin tone, if you are a lighter skinned person,
Mm-hmm.
you may be afforded other opportunities, but are you taking advantage of those opportunities? Are you taking privilege of it just like there's white privilege? Are you taking
Mm-hmm.
light skin privilege?
Right.
Are you using that to put somebody else down to
Mm-hmm.
further you and to further your objective? Like, there's a lot that we can dive into here, but I hope that you all just really take a beat, take a step back, think about how you're parenting your children, think about how you're
Mm-hmm.
maybe reparenting yourself and how you're
Yes.
thinking about these things as you go through your day-to-day activities. Think about how you describe people. Are you using their skin tone as one of the first descriptions of
Mm.
giving somebody, an idea of who you're talking about? We really need to take a step and really think about this.
True.
And I hope that this does open a lane of dialogue for you, your friends, and your family. But we're going to take a quick break and come back with the last sip of the day with your Hood Dolly Mama. And we are back. This is the last sip of tea with your Hood Dolly Lama. The world will always tell you that you're something else, that you're too dark, too short, whatever. We need to show black men and women that we are emotional, we are strong, we are smart, and we are intuitive. And that is from the Queen King herself, Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter. Okay? And I don't have anything else to add other than, again, just take a step back, look at how you're presenting yourself to the world, look at how you are, your perceptions of things
Mm-hmm.
are like, think about how your perception of things are, and really just do a self-assessment to see if you are one of these people that are perpetuating some stereotypes or some effects of colorism. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
And
sounds
that is the
good.
last sip of tip with your Hood Dolly Llama.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks all for joining us this week on Sippin' Tea with Nat and Z. As you know, you can follow us on Instagram at sippintea_Nat and Z_pod. And of course on Facebook, Sippin' Tea Nat and Z, to get information on upcoming podcast topics, guests, and news. Thanks for listening, and catch us next episode where we talk about having a purpose-driven life. Be well, everyone, and be kind to each other this week.